David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you a pen from Wancher, which might look very familiar for reasons you will see here in a moment. And the name of the pen is the Matcha. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this leafy offering, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to the good folks at Wancher who have kindly supported this channel for a number of years for providing this pen for review. The pen arrives in this very nice softwood box, this little ribbon on top. Inside, we have a couple of proprietary cartridges. And then, set this aside, there is a nice soft sleeve. And then inside of this sleeve, if I can get it out, we have a pen. This is the Wancher Matcha. Now, I said that it might look familiar because it is essentially a custom Sailor Pro Gear. Everything on this pen is branded Wancher, but in regard to the pen and the nib, Sailor is the OEM manufacturer. I say this right off the top because I don't want you to think that Wancher is knocking off Sailor or anything like that. This pen and nib are manufactured by Sailor. And in regard to the nib, it's something a little bit different for a Pro Gear. And spoiler alert, I care for it a great deal. The pen is named the Matcha, which is the name of a very highly regarded Japanese green tea. It is a bit unique because it's like a powdered tea made from a finely ground tea leaves, which dissolve in hot water. Once whisked, the powder becomes suspended in the water and develops a frothy foam. The stems and veins of the leaves are removed before the leaves are ground into the fine powder, and it really provides a silky smooth tea which is naturally sweet. On a side note, while I admit that I am not the biggest tea fan, it's not something I drink at home, but if I'm ever out and about and I'm offered some nice tea, then I will enjoy it. I've mentioned this in a previous review, but a couple of years ago, I was on a trip to China and we visited a very nice tea shop where you sat down and had a tasting session. A woman came out and prepared each tea in front of us and taught us a bit about each one. It was a really fun experience. I like experiences like that where it's something out of my comfort zone. I just decide to kind of take it all in and experience something new and try everything presented to me. When you do that, who knows? You might end up with really liking something you never would have even thought you would in the first place. Now, did it turn me into a tea fan? No, not really, but it still was a lot of fun. Okay, back to the pen at hand. At first glance, I thought the cap and barrel were a solid tea green, but upon closer examination, there are little flecks of gold embedded into the resin. I kind of feel this represents the small bits of leaves which become suspended after the tea is whisked. Typically, an olive green or tea green like this is one of my least favorite colors for a pen, but the additions of this flex really add an element of life to this pen. I care for it more than if it were just a flat color. Okay, let's take a look at the parts and features of this pen. The top of the cap has a cream finial, which represents a ceramic mug that you might have your tea in. I think the cream pairs well with the green and really looks better than if it were just a stark white. On the top of the finial, it is inlaid with the Wancher logo. This transitions into the traditional Pro Gear clip. It's gold, as is the other metal trim on this pen. The clip is very accommodating. The cap angles up and really doesn't straighten out until the very end where we have this rather large band. This band is a bit different than what you'll find on most Pro Gear models. There are some Pro Gear models that have this band. It is stamped with Wancher, and then it also says made in Japan. The band angles down, so the transition from the cap to the barrel is minimized. The barrel is straight for about 1.5 inches before tapering down, and at the end we have a solid gold band, and it is punctuated with a cream end piece which matches the top of the cap. The cap twists off with 1.5 rotations, and underneath we have what I feel is a real highlight of this pen, which is this 18 karat gold nib. Now, on most Pro Gear pens, the nibs are 21 karat, and the mediums are generally hard. And what I mean by that is they're described as hard mediums, which tend to write a bit more firm and have a thinner line, more like a Western fine. You'll see in the writing sample, but this medium 18 karat gold nib writes a bit more like a Western medium. It's softer and smoother than a standard sailor nib, but it still has that nice sailor nib feedback. It's a very pleasant combination. This nib is available in extra fine, fine, medium fine, medium, broad, and for an additional cost, you can equip it with one of Wancher's Kiru nibs, which is Wancher's take on an architect grind. I have an entire video dedicated to that nib if you'd care to learn more about it. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section begins with a very slight flare and angles up. Then you have a thin band and an even transition into the threads and the remainder of the barrel. This section isn't overly large, so I find my grip spills over to the threads, but between the even transition from the section to the barrel and the fairly smooth threads, I find it to be very comfortable in the hand. This is not an overly large pen, but it's long enough for me to use unposted. The cap does post, and it does post deeply and securely. I like how the angled cap band really minimizes the step down from the cap to the barrel so that transition is smooth if it should run up against the inside of your hand. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts proprietary Sailor cartridges, and a Sailor converter is provided as well. With the metal in this housing and the multiple piece barrel, eyedropping this pen would not be recommended. The Matcha is available only on the Wancher website. I will put a link to it in the notes below. It retails for $310, which is pretty much the same price you will see Pro Gears offered on most sites. It's nice to see that this specialty model is priced the same as standard models. Overall, the Pro Gear is one of my favorite pens, and this particular pen, even though it is technically not a Pro Gear, that doesn't do anything to hurt my impression of it. In fact, this is a very nice 18 karat gold nib that really only accentuates my impression of this pen. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample with this very well performing nib. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Wancher Matcha. I wanted to give you another close-up look. Let's see if we can get it without the reflections. You can kind of really see the flakes that are in there, and I think it adds some life to this pen. But in regard to some size comparisons, this is what it looks like with another Sailor Pro Gear. You can see this is the Imperial Black, and that kind of does have the same band. This is another model called the Kanreki, and this one has a more traditional band for the Sailor Pro Gear. And then here is a Pro Gear Slim. And then finally, here is a King of Pen Pro Gear. So you can see how those all compare to one another. In regard to some other Wancher pens, this was the Wancher Sakai. I just really love this Arushi work on that particular pen. And then here is the Kiei Arushi, which is their Dream Pen model, but this is an actual leaf that's on here. And then finally, one of my favorite Wancher models is the Japan Blue. This was another partnership that they had with Sailor, but this is essentially a metal pen with hammered metal on it. And the performance is just outstanding. So Wancher has made some really good pens over the years. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, here it is with the King of Pen Pro Gear. And then here it is with the Sakai. And then finally, here it is with the Pro Gear Slim. So here we go with the writing sample for the Wancher Matcha. And this is a medium 18 karat gold nib. And, I don't have a lot of kind of tea green inks. And so the one that I felt paired with it most was from a company called Wancher. And this is their Nopal. This is what the ink looks like. That it is an ink that's basically inspired by a cactus in Mexico. This is what it looks like in comparison with Andorilium's Bobtail Squid Green. And then here it is with Mont Blanc's Irish Green. This is what the ink bottles look like. They are a little narrow at the neck here, but it's interesting because they do come with this little stand. So when you have them in there, they're not going to fall over when you're inking it up. And so that's a nice little stand that's provided with there. And they make some nice inks as well. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. As I mentioned during the review, I really care for this 18 karat gold nib. That it isn't, this medium is not as firm. You can get a little bit of line variation out of here, but it isn't as firm as the hard medium 21 karat gold nibs on a standard Pro Gear. In regard to ink flow, it's rather generous. In regard to reverse writing, it's a little scratchy, but it gets the job done. But I will say it's significantly smoother than a 21 karat gold nib. In regard to the fast writing, the feed keeps up very well. So here we have the Wancher Matcha. I'll put a link to where you can find it on the Wancher site, listed in the notes below. I think it's an interesting offering. Pro Gear has always been one of my favorite models, and that I think this is an interesting addition to that collection. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.